Are you living in your own jail? Now, yesterday I was on YouTube, and as YouTube does from time to time, they throw the odd random video in just to probably try and get you down a rabbit hole. But I came upon this video by Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, if you don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, again, I would recommend you do a Google search on it because he's an interesting character. He was someone who started off on YouTube. I think his father had a wine shop or had a small kind of wine business, and Gary was creating YouTube videos talking about probably buying wine, tasting wine, all those different things involving wine. And he made tons and tons of videos on YouTube, and he built a big following up over there, and he helped his father's business explode. So he became a kind of a business and marketing genius, and a lot of people pay a lot of money to get in front of him and to get his advice. Now, in this video that was on YouTube, he was speaking to an audience, and he was bringing up the topic of the way we kind of build our own jails and force ourselves to live in a certain way. Now, what he meant was sometimes we live beyond our means to try to impress others. We buy the large house to impress the family or the neighbours that we are winning. We maybe buy an extra car, so all of a sudden there's 2 cars in the driveway that need to be paid for, again to impress everyone else, maybe a BMW or a Mercedes or whatever. But we take on more and more debt to show to the world that we are getting ahead, but behind it all, when the doors are closed, we probably hate our life. We're probably holding on by our fingernails, and we are not having a good time at all. So as Gary said in that video, he mentioned before that he brought that up in, I don't know whether it was an interview or something like that, but he said if you weren't happy, you should sell your house. And you should sell your house and move to something maybe that might be a little bit affordable, but somewhere that would make you happy. So he just more or less said, just drop everything, just leave it, walk away and go somewhere where you would be happier. Now, he said when he mentioned that in the video, he said the comments exploded because everybody was kind of saying, oh, how dare you, and imagine making people do that, and sell houses and all those different things. And he said he was very surprised that people reacted the way they did, but it does make sense when you do think about it. A lot of us unfortunately do kind of look and see what everyone else is doing, try to compete with them, or try to show that we are a little bit better with them by kind of getting the cars, the houses, the clothes and all those different things. Now, I have nothing against getting nice cars or living in a nice house and having nice clothes, but there does reach a point where it's a little bit overkill, where you are just wondering, are you doing it for you or are you doing it to show off to everybody else? I remember reading in one of the Stoic books a couple of weeks back, they had mentioned, I forget which one it was, but one of them had mentioned that if you were the last person that lived in the world, you had everything in the world, all the penthouses, all the Ferraris, everything in the world was your kind of toy, nobody else was in the world with you, you would find over time that you would probably get sick of living in that penthouse apartment. You'd probably get fed up of driving around in a Lamborghini, having to get in and out of it, and it would kind of wear thin after a while living like that. And you would probably find maybe you might go back to the simpler times. You might find that rather than driving around that sports car, you would rather maybe just ease back and just hop on a bicycle and just ride around and admire the scenery, or that maybe that penthouse isn't as good as you thought. Maybe it takes a lot more cleaning because you're now on your own and you have to take care of it, and you would probably find you'd probably move to a smaller home, maybe in a simpler area. You might end up maybe moving, rather than living in the city, you might want to move maybe out to the countryside or live in the woods or something like that, and you would find you'd probably go back to a simpler life. Now, again, as it said in the Stoic kind of tale, when other people are involved, when we are around other people, we do try to impress them or show that we are getting ahead. So because you're living in the world on your own, because you've got nobody to impress, you don't really care if nobody sees you riding around a bike. You don't really care if people see you living in the woods, because you've nobody to compete with. You're not kind of trying to impress anybody, so you do kind of take up a simpler life because it just makes you happier. So like Gary and the Stoics say, should you really be putting yourself into a jail that you're not happy with? Now, while Gary was mentioned kind of financially, maybe if you think about your business, your writing business or your publishing business or whatever you're doing, are you building a jail for yourself that you're just not happy in? You might seem to the world, the outside world, that you are winning right now. You might have a big following on social media. You might be, a well-paid author in a certain genre or whatever. But to the outside world, you might look like you're winning, but if you're not happy, should you really stay in that jail that you built for yourself? Unfortunately, there probably are some authors who are making money in particular genres that they're not happy in, but because they have the big following and they're afraid of, hurting their readers or losing their audience, they're afraid of just dropping everything and saying, you know what, I'm just not happy writing fiction or whatever. I would rather go off and do such and such a thing instead. And they're afraid of doing that because they're afraid of losing that audience. Again, to people who are on this kind of social media kind of merry-go-round where, again, they see everyone else on social media. They're being told that everybody should be on social media, and again, they're building this kind of jail for themselves, the social media jail that forces them to show up regularly, that forces them maybe to spend time creating content that they probably don't really like creating, maybe, losing out on time with their families, whatever, because everyone else is doing that, because all those other people are kind of living in those self-imposed little jails. They feel that they need to do the same, and again, they're not happy because maybe their content isn't being received well, maybe it's not being approved of, and maybe it's just depressing them every day when they're seeing how the rest of the world is getting on social media, and it feels like they're falling behind everybody else. Again, the self-imposed jails where we feel that we need to impress everyone else. So I want you to think about that for a moment. Not only financially are you putting yourself in a jail, but in your business too. Are you doing things you're just not happy with? Maybe you'd be better off just dropping all social media today and just saying, something, I would be a lot happier if I didn't have to go to those platforms and hang out with all those people. I would rather do something like maybe a podcast or something like that I would, love showing up to every day, and it would free me up, and I could maybe be a bit more creative rather than on those platforms. Or again, financially, if you're taking on too much debt, do you really need the things that you do, or are you, doing it to impress your audience? Now, I want you to think about that. It might take a little bit of kind of introspection to really get behind why you are doing what you're doing. Do you really need that second car? Do you really need this and that? Again, they are big choices, and I'm not saying you should drop everything and go and move into a cave. But as Gary said, if you're not happy in what you do, should you really continue doing it? Because you probably only have one kind of ride on this roundabout. So should you really be doing things that aren't making you happy? Are you doing things just to impress others, or are you just kind of monkey see, monkey do, following the herd and doing everything that they're doing because you think that is the way to win? Maybe you just want to put on a show or whatever, just impress people that probably don't really think about you, and but you have this kind of notion in your head that you need to do the things that you're doing. So give that some thought today. Are you putting yourself in, are you boxing yourself in some way? Are you jailing yourself and forcing yourself to live that way to impress others? And if you are, maybe it's time for a rethink. Maybe it's time to get out of that, or maybe ease back on what you're doing, or just stop trying to impress so many people. It'll probably cost you a lot less in your pocket. So give that some thought today. As always, if you'd like to find more of this great content, do a search for WriteCome, WriteCome.com. And if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, hit the little bell button on YouTube, or click the subscribe button on your iPod device or whatever, your podcast device, if you want to subscribe, and I will send all the next couple of episodes on to you. And as always, have a great day, and thanks for your time. Bye bye.